Hello and welcome to Solely Singleton, episode 202. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
And unfortunately, Christian is also here.
Yeah.
Christian would really like to be having dinner right now, but we have work to do.
It's true, there was a new set.
There was actually 2 new sets, but we didn't want to talk about cowboys.
I don't know. I got a foil Spinewoods Armadillo right here, a foil Aloe Alchemist. Here's Phantom Interference.
Who the fuck is paying you enough for foils?
I got these for free.
Oh, okay. Anyway, we're discussing an entirely different set today. We're discussing Modern Horizons 3. And as with all Modern Horizons sets, we're going to be discussing its matching commander set, because this is the state of Magic the Gathering in 2024.
I mean, luckily though, this is the third one, and everybody knows that the third in a series is the best.
Unironically, I really like this set. I went out of my way to make sure we recorded this week, specifically because I enjoyed the hell out of the spoiler season. So, for a format for this episode, we were just going to do like an old school talk about everything hot takes, but it's a school night and we all have to be at work in the morning. So we're going to do an extended version of our top 5 format and do a top 10, which will at least police us from talking about like literally half the set. So, start us off, Christian. Let's do our honorable mentions real quick, just for things that deserve a mention that we like but couldn't make a top 10. Rapid fire, go.
All right, so one of my 2 quote-unquote honorable mentions, the landscape cycle. I have fetch lands in my cube now?
I have fetch lands in my cube, and I'm still looking at these to some extent. Like, these are legitimately very good.
Yeah.
They're great. They come in untapped. They can tap for colorless. You can sacrifice them to search for a basic land of any of those 3 types that are in it. And this is the part that's really cool about them. They all can cycle. And the cycling it's relevant. I don't think it'll come up that often. What's really cool is that they all have a cycling cost that is their associated 3 colors. And that makes them very, very easy to identify at a glance which one it is.
Yeah.
True.
It is actually just a nice little bonus.
I just really like the idea of having an upgrade to Terramorphic Expanse variants that are color locked in order to act as a signal during drafting, if that makes sense. What is a partial downside, partial upside, because it is basic land type, so you can do shenanigans like grabbing triomes.
Well, they search for basics.
Oh, they are basic? Oh, fuck, I didn't see the word basic. That's so disappointing. They're still fine. I thought they could grab fucking triomes though, man.
That would be awesome.
I was like, these are fucking nuts.
I mean, they're still really nice.
They're still very good lands, but I thought they were like cracked.
Nah, bro, not a common.
I mean, it's an MH set. We got an upgrade to Hero's Downfall at common. They can do whatever they want in this set.
I mean, to be fair though, like, how far can you push panoramas and still keep it a common?
Yeah, you'll ruin Pauper when they can fetch all of their shock.
I will say, I don't like ending on this note, though. These cards are, like, super cool.
They're still very good.
You still get your double landfall trigger. If you need a specific color, yes, it has to come in tapped. You got your choice of 3. Done a lot of practice drafts with these. They're super great in draft. You can pick them relatively early, just like you would a dual land, but you just gain access to so many more potential areas of fixing. And it's just, I don't know, it just works super well. They're super clean.
It's unlikely that cycling is going to happen very often, but it corresponds to the colors that you can fetch. And that is honestly just nice visually of like the colors are there. I don't have to read. Yeah, awesome cycle.
Okay, so outside of the landscape cycle, I also want to talk about the return of Magic Dumb Fuck cards, or MDFCs. I am a known MDFC hater. However, that has changed. I now have MDFCs in my cube, and I think these are really cool. There are dual land ones, which are super awesome. Basically, effectively guild gates on the one side, right? Just without the gate text. And then on the other side, you've got a hybrid spell. And some of them are a lot better than others. Some of them you would just play the front half, arguably. Some of them you don't ever want to play the back half. And then they also have single color ones. So there is a set of 2 for each color, both uncommon. They have a spell on the one side, and then on the other side, it's a basic land, but it can actually enter untapped for 3 life. So that's one big difference that these have over the other land-based MDFCs that we've had so far. That was enough to push it for me where I'm like, okay, well, even if it's really life expensive to do so.
3 life is so much, dude.
It is a lot. It is not inconsequential.
But you're right. Like, there are times where it's like, if I don't do this, I'm probably going to lose anyways because I need to play this 4-drop or whatever. And this is the only land I have. So
Again, some of these are more playable than others. I'm not playing all 10, just like I'm not playing all 10 of the hybrid dual land MDFCs. But just their existence is super awesome. Between these and the landscapes, I think the health of my draft format has greatly improved, which is awesome to see.
and it's just nice to see more hybrid cards. Maybe one day we'll actually be able to do like hybrid sections as like a thing. All right, Brad, do you want to go through your honorable mentions?
Mine should be pretty quick. I just want to shout out a few cards that couldn't make my list. They're not the strongest cards. They're just cards that make me happy and are debatable at least.
Again, like all of the cards on our lists are not ranked by power level. That's always true.
But anyway, honorable mentions from me. Phyrogoyf is probably just going to be your best beat stick for 3 in black now. It's a lot better than Grim Dancer and any Nighthawk variant we've ever seen.
It is so hilarious that it's like, this is the new best Vampire Nighthawk. And comparing it to Vampire Nighthawk is insane.
It's a very strong card if you want to try to do it. I just don't think I need it. At the same time, like, I've got a soft spot for Nighthawks and Grim Dancer, and like if I saw a Phyrogoyf in a cube, I'd be quite happy.
This card's nuts. What the fuck?
It's really
I'm
good.
just not reading it.
No, it's really good.
To be fair, this is one that does have some extra like synergy of like milling is something that you're probably gonna want, so it's not just
Which grows a Goyf, yeah.
yeah.
I can't believe it's just a single black.
Yeah, it's solid.
Then we've got White of the Reliquary, which you cannot say 3 times fast. It is a Knight of the Reliquary upgrade / side grade in a better color set for the modified effect. So it's way more appealing to me than Knight of the Reliquary ever was. As far as Golgari cards go, White of the Reliquary is very interesting. In general, I'd be happy to see it in anyone's cube. It just looks really fun. It kind of works with everything green-black could possibly want. Then we've got Emrakul, the only one that I'm really going to put on this list even as an honorable. I love the Eldrazi. I like seeing them back in this set. Very cool.
You have no idea how disappointed I am that you didn't say the full name. Like, Emrakul the World Anew. Come on, dude.
Emrakul 3. So she is probably way more fun.
I am not sure about that.
Way more fun for you. I don't give a shit how your opponent feels. Fun is a zero-sum game.
This is going to be miserable to play against for most matchups.
Oh, yeah, but who cares? Kozilek's just a bunch of damage. Ulamog has the word ward, so I'm already done with that card. Emrakul has the word madness pays 6 colorless, which is a great flavor text line that's never going to come into play, but is cool as hell.
It should never come into play. But, like, there is a downside to it, though. Like, it isn't just all happiness. If they make it go away, you lose your board.
Yeah, but you also lost their board.
Sure, but like...
Who cares? I'm not playing other creatures. The other cheat targets are stuck in my hand.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, gotta keep going. Marionette Apprentice is a very good card. I really wanted it to fit in my top 10. It's kind of slot 11 here.
This one should or could and should be in my list. There's a lot of cards.
Marionette Apprentice is really good as a combo between everything from sacrifice to artifact deck to playing a little bit with life encounters. It does everything all in one package. It's a very, very nice card.
Just like best friends with Duretti, ingenious iconoclast. Like, let's go.
And the most important honorable mention that I couldn't find room for it, but I have to say the name is Crabama.
Can't even do it.
Crabomination. I just saw Crab Demon and then I read it and it's like not even an embarrassing card and I'm like, damn, I love you.
I mean, it's not good, but it's not embarrassing, and that is a crab demon.
Crabomination is honestly not that embarrassing though. Like, if you're not playing Grizzlebrand or Grave Titan or Archon of Cruelty or anything like that, then yeah, it's still a fine, non-embarrassing card. It's just we have the entire history of Magic to get the 3 best ones to throw in there.
Probably the best name out of all of those, though, so.
It's true. Anyway, Eric, what are your honorables?
I just got a couple. I want to shout out to Talon Gates of Madara. I don't think this is a particularly great card, but a land that can come into play and phase a creature is such a unique and interesting play pattern that I'm just like, man, I want it to be so good. It's so cool, okay?
The cube slot is not worth it though.
No. Similarly, Shifting Woodland. So this one, I don't actually know. Like, I feel like Delirium's not that difficult to get to, and just having a copy of, you know, some target permanent card for 4 mana, that's not that difficult to do in green. I don't know if it's worth a cube slot though. Like, it feels like it's on the tier of like a Shelldock Isle or something like that.
That's kind of how I feel about the entire cycle.
It's probably fine. Don't know if it's worth it though. Like, this one's the most interesting to me out of the cycle.
I liked the black one the best. I liked this one a lot as well. My problem with this one is every time we played with Delirium in cube, you never have Delirium. I feel like the actual Delirium part of this means it is literally just an awkward forest.
And that's why I was like, I don't know, because we've tried it and it has been historically a pain in the ass. The last honorable mention that I want to throw out there is Flare of Duplication, Fork. When was the last time fork effects were good and not Lutri?
Look, fork that's free is not fork. Fork's a bad card. Fork that's free is a lot different.
I feel like Flare of Duplication is likely a trap. Like, you probably shouldn't have it in your cube unless you're going into like a full like combo centric kind of thing. But goddamn, do I want to play it with like Fire Blast and like that kind of dumb shit, right?
I don't even think it's a trap in red, because the nice part is being able to stop your opponent's spell in addition. It's like a bad secondary bolt that is always 0 mana but costs you your creature you already swung with. But also you get the mode where it's protection in a worst case, where like they go to wrath and you just sack a creature. Oh no, that one's cut. Damn it. Because it's not. I'm thinking of the fact that you use it to counter counters. Whereas, yeah.
And that's the thing, is like the counters that you actually want to counter are wraths, which don't work. But like, I mean, you could stop them from killing something, or at least like scare them enough.
2 for 1ing yourself to avoid. No.
I mean, it depends on what they have. If it's super scary and you're just like, haha. Yeah, no, it's like I said, I think it's likely a trap. I feel like a lot of people are going to try it just because of the like Fire Blast, awesome shenanigans, let's go, you're dead. I think it'll be okay though in general. So that is my honorable mentions. Who wants to start their actual top 10 list?
All right, well, you all get Emrakul. Check out what I get. We got Breaker of Creation.
It's almost got square stats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, you know, one is a new world, the other one's Breaking Creation. So
hey, this is an 8 mana uncommon Eldrazi. It's a 6 colorless. For an uncommon creature Eldrazi, it is an 8/4. It's 4 times as good as a 2/4. When you cast this spell, you gain 1 life for each colorless permanent you control. That includes your lands. It has hexproof from each color, and it has Annihilator too. This card is a Reanimator target, plain and simple.
Can it also just be a Palaka Worm equivalent ramp target?
Yeah, I'm hoping that the way that I have adjusted my cube slightly, you'll be able to naturally be able to cast this in a ramp deck.
it's bloody difficult though.
Well, I've also changed ramp in my cube. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to get into it right now, but ultimately this is primarily just a good Reanimator target.
Yeah, for uncommon, it's crazy to have hexproof each color.
And like Annihilator 2 is not nothing when you're swinging for 8.
And when you're doing it on turn 3 or 4.
Yeah.
A lot of people point out the 4 toughness, but if you're bringing it out super early, along with the Annihilator 2, then it just, you're usually going to be fine.
So long as it's not 3 toughness, man. But then again, hexproof from each color.
Either way, there's a reason why it's my number 10. Honestly, the only reason why I put it on my list is because this card, just in its existence, it was enough that it made me adjust things. Things like pain lands or filter lands or whatever that, it's like, I'm trying to allow for incidental colorless, so I figured it at least deserved a spot here.
And to give context to our audience who weren't here for the pre-show, you have like 50-ish cards on your test list for this set alone, right?
I have added 55 cards from this set.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the landscapes, it's not that difficult to change up your mana base just a little bit to be able to support some colorless. I don't think Breaker of Creation is necessarily needing that support because it's going to be a Reanimator target, but
I don't want anybody to get the impression that it's like, wow, you've completely changed your cube just so you can cast this of all things is going to happen so rarely. Like, you're right. I'm not trying to go all in here. I'm just Got to make sure that it's at least potentially possible, right? But I'm really happy with this card.
All right, for my top 10, let's start off with the land I've got. Lazotep Quarry, which I think is the better of the two lands between it and Madara.
Yeah, out of the two, I agree that like Lazotep has more to defend putting it in other than wouldn't it be cool?
Lazotep Quarry honestly just looks extremely strong. So basic colorless land, it is a desert. Then it's got the beginning of the spice with the tap, sack a creature for a mana of any color. Normally you're not going to use that unless you want a sack outlet that doesn't cost mana. So it's a boon for like your Rakdos sacrifice stuff or your black-white or whatever you're doing sacrifice-wise. It can get some help there. But the real reason we're here is the final ability. Pay X to tap and sacrifice a desert, so you're sacrificing this. So X2 tap sack. Exile target creature card with mana value X from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it except for it's a 4/4 black zombie. Activate only as a sorcery. Essentially, you're eternalizing whatever you choose. That's a huge value if you're an aggro deck late game, or if you bring back a utility creature, but now it's a fat 4/4.
I honestly like a 4/4 just coming out of nowhere from a land is pretty good.
And like, you could bring it in off of something like Primetime or whatever you're using to fetch up a land, and now you have the insurance policy for if it gets destroyed later.
Yeah, it's not like you're really cheating on mana or anything like that, but
no, but it helps you stay sticky. So it works in several decks that I can think of in like the everything but blue spectrum.
Basically, yeah. There's enough to do with creatures in basically all colors that like you're going to probably find value out of it.
If you are either utility creature heavy and want to make sure you get them back for extra value, or you're an aggro deck looking to close out the game after a board wipe, you want this as an insurance policy over your random, your 17th, 16th land, depending which deck.
Yeah. I mean, it's not nothing. Like, luckily it doesn't come into play tapped, but like by default, it's only creating colorless. You have to sack a creature to get any color out of this land. So like there is some cost to it, but like, yeah, it's a pretty powerful effect for the decks that are going to want it.
All right, Eric, your number 10.
My number 10 is Reckless Pyrosurfer. 1 in a red for a 2/2 human scout with haste and landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, Reckless Pyrosurfer gains battle cry until end of turn.
So when I was doing preview season, I called this would be on your list. I was like, I have no interest in this card, but this is one of Eric's favorite cards.
Yeah, and like that's fair. Like this is not the most exciting card ever, but like the 2-drop 2/2 haste is
a solid baseline. People played bad cards because they were that as a baseline. Looking at you, robber of the rich, you were garbage.
And like Battlecry is really strong. A lot of times it's tied to creatures or effects that are just fucking terrible.
Yeah, just generally overcosted for the effect usually. It's baked into the assumption.
So like way back in the day, we had tried Goblin War Driver.
Yeah, we did.
Red is really a pain.
Especially because like your token decks back then were not going to be red decks.
It's a bit different now, but like it's still red is a pain to actually guarantee. And especially when it didn't have haste, it was like, okay, you have to play it on turn 2 so you can swing on turn 3 with your other stuff. Like it actually was not bad once you got the thing to do it, but like not great. The other one that did do a decent better job was a Quarter Paladin.
That's the one that people mostly remember from Cube. It was played pretty commonly.
There's like that and the 1-drop colorless one.
Signal Pest.
Yeah, so it's just one of those that like Battlecry is really strong, and on the haste creature you get some good value, especially out of like fetch lands later on, because like Battlecry actually like stacks. Not the fanciest, shiniest card ever, but I think Reckless Pyrosurfer is going to slot into the 2-drop aggressive slot really well.
All right, Christian, you don't have a mouthful of food. Why don't you tell us about your number 9 slot?
Hey, what about Hopeender Coatl? Hopeender Coatl is 2 and a blue for an uncommon Eldrazi snake. It is a 2/2 with flash and flying and devoid, I guess. And when you cast the spell, counter target spell an opponent controls unless they pay 1. So yeah, so 4 spike on a flash 2/2 flyer at uncommon. Like, let's just take a step back and realize how much better that is than what we used to get at this rarity. This card's really cool. I really like the art, for one.
I do too. It helps.
What else is there to say? This is really good in any blue deck in Peasant, I think. I mean, you're not really giving up much to have to play it. Is it going to counter something every time you cast it? No. There are going to be times where it doesn't. A lot of times you're going to get somebody, on turn 3. A lot of times you'll get them then, on like turn 5 or 6 once they're trying to cast their second spell in a turn. But honestly, like I could see this being good in a more tempo-oriented, aggressive style blue deck. I could see it being just as effective in a control style blue deck. It's just really good.
Yeah.
It does exactly what you said it does.
And it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of one of those elegant cards. We were talking a little bit about like the inelegant nature of modern Magic.
Do you want to talk about an elegant card that you're not allowed to play for some reason? Because they put it in the commander set, so they upped it a rarity. Blood Braid Challenger is 3 red-green for a 4/3 creature elf berserker with Cascade, Haste, and Escape. 3 red-green, exile 3 cards from your graveyard.
It's bigger and better.
It's a lot better, partly because it's not a 4-drop, if that makes sense. I like it better than most of the 5-drops in red and all of them in green, close to all of them in green.
Yeah, it's honestly just really nice to be able to hit the 4-drops from the Cascade.
The bigger body, the escape is huge. You are absolutely capable of escaping this at least once per game. In your average Jundi Naya-E mid-range deck, easily.
Honestly, the fact that Blood Braid Challenger has escape is really going to be annoying in these Gruul. Top end is this. Get them dead. Oh, they answered it once. Well, good luck, because it's coming back. And hey, Cascade Haste. Get dead.
There has to be the cube achievement. I know Bloodbraid is not that strong anymore.
But like you Blood Braid into Blood Braid.
If you pull it off, we all have to like go look at that game for a minute and just appreciate this happening.
All right, so my number 9 is Ajani. So Ajani in the Coatl Pariah is 1 and a white for a 1/2 legendary cat warrior. When he enters the battlefield, create a 2/1 white cat warrior creature token, and whenever one or more other cats you control die, you may exile Ajani and then return him to the battlefield transformed into Ajani Coatl Avenger. And he's a planeswalker that starts with 3 starting loyalty. He's got a +2 that put a +1/+1 counter on each cat you control. A 0 where you create a 2/1 white cat warrior creature token. When you do, if you control a red permanent other than Ajani Coatl Avenger, he deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target. And a -4, each opponent chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control, then sacrifices the rest. Look at the card and realize that is efficient
Abs.
and good. But there's a lot of words.
And abs.
Yes.
Look at those pectoral muscles.
Those pecs they're good, but I mean there could be better. Those abs though.
Can we just talk about the fact that Ajani's backside art is literally just random barbarian art that someone copy pasted Ajani's face onto? It really doesn't match the rest of the art.
No, like the front side is like you're clearly like cat leg type things going on, feet, and like the back is
A little awkward.
It's okay, because if I want to get mad at this set, I'm pretty sure this probably has 45 variations you can buy instead of it.
I'm not taking that bet.
You could put my face on that art and it wouldn't look any worse.
Barilio, you have a job this week. We have the technology.
It's okay if needs to be delayed. That has to happen. But yeah, I mean, Ajani is just good. Let's go on to Christian.
All right, let's talk about Goon Elemental. Goon Elemental is 1 and a white for a 2/2 enchantment creature elemental at uncommon. It has Bestow for 1 and a white. It has Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Goon Elemental. An enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Goon. So this thing's great, right?
Yeah, it's a brand new mechanic we've never seen before with Bestow.
That's true.
There's never been a Magic card with Bestow before. We should probably explain it to people because no one knows what this is.
So Bestow is, if you would Goon this card for its Bestow cost, it's an aura spell with enchant creature. It becomes a creature again if it's not Gooning.
It's funny because like the only other card that Bestow was ever good on was Boon Satyr. Get gooning, Boon Satyr.
Which Goon Satyr?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so perfect.
We went from Goon Satyr to Goon Elemental.
And at least it's white now.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is a good card.
It's just crazy to me that they didn't make the Bestow cost 1 more. Like in almost every scenario, with bestow cards. The bestow costs more than the creature itself. That's kind of the whole thing, because it is just better to bestow creatures a great majority of the time. So if you have a 1-drop, you just bestow this most of the time.
Right.
The big thing that's really cool about this is that now that I have access to fetch lands, the landfall text on any of these cards becomes a lot more relevant. Even if it only happens once per game that you get the double landfall, that's huge. I mean, if you're bestowing this on turn 2, obviously when you bestow it on that turn, if you're doing it on turn 2, you're not going to get the landfall text.
Yeah, it's not getting the base 2/2 bonus.
Okay, so then I guess in that case, bestowing it on turn 2 is best if you want a little bit of protection against removal and you feel like you're going to be able to get a few landfall triggers off of it.
I mean, it also depends on if you have like a tempo evasion kind of thing that just valuing is going to do more, and actually also hedge your bets against removal and board wipes.
Yeah, I mean, it's super flexible, which is super cool. Also, synergy, +1/+1 counters. I mean, you don't really have to do anything with this for it to just grow in size and just become a threat. It doesn't really take that many landfall triggers for it to become a relevant creature either. I mean, a single one, and it's nowadays, I guess, on rate, but I would say above rate. 2, it's just definitely above rate.
All right, enough gooning. It's time to get into looks maxing.
Skibbity Psychic Frog Riz.
Skibbity Psychic. Psychic Forg is blue-black for a 1/2 creature Forg.
I was drinking water, you bitch. I don't know why that one got me so much. Oh, God. Okay, I'm going to try to drink water again. Jesus Christ.
Whenever Psychic Forg deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card, and Psychic Forg has discard a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Psychic Forg. Exile 3 cards from the graveyard of you who own Psychic Forg. Psychic Forg gains flying until end of turn.
Good save at the end there.
I was just trying to jam more Psychic Forgs in somewhere.
I'm glad that you pronounced the G pretty well, because first time you said it was Psychic Fork, and I was like, I don't know what a Psychic Fork is, man.
So Psychic Frog is really damn good.
Yes.
It does everything a blue-black deck needs all at once.
But it's still a Dimir card fighting in the Dimir section.
And it is just a great glue piece.
It is a great glue piece.
It is probably correct to play. It's just at the same time, it's like if you're trying to go hard into a certain deck of some whatever variety, you're going to have trouble finding room for generic good blue-black card.
Yeah, and there's so many of those like splashy, fancy blue-black cards, you know, that you're like, this is what I'm trying to do in the section. I've got ninjas. It just feels weird to be like, okay, here's just an efficient 2-drop that's gonna like keep the deck running.
Do you remember when we started this podcast 40 years ago and there were still grandpas playing Psychotog back then?
I do, yeah.
And now you have Psychic Forg?
A bit of a glow up.
I just wanted to say Psychic Forg again.
You really got me with the first one.
I know. I just enjoy it so much. He's a Forgy.
He's a Forgy. Wow.
Eric, read us the best card in red.
Lightning Bolt.
Read us the best card in red in this set.
What do you want from me? All right. Party Thrasher, 1 in a red for a 1/4 lizard wizard, has non-creature spells you cast from exile have Convoke. And at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may discard a card. If you do, exile the top 2 cards of your library, then choose one of them. You may play that card this turn. I feel like the top part is additive distraction, and yet I still like it.
It's still not 0, and it works with the bottom part.
It does.
It is cohesive. I almost feel like if they were written in the other order, the card would click easier for people.
Isn't this basically just like you block with it and then you tap it for red to cast a burn spell?
You have to cast from exile. It's specifically for its second ability.
There are technically some other things that you could get some synergy, but like that exists just for his own thing. I mean, it's a solid 2-drop.
If you're in a defensive spells deck, like, he is going to churn out value while being a great blocker.
Yeah, and initially when I read this, I didn't think of the defensive spells deck because I glanced over the play. So, like, you can still play your lands, which is a huge deal on that deck specifically. Because if you couldn't play and it was just casting, this would be an aggro-only kind of card.
The 1/4 body also helps you realize how good it's going to be in a spells deck. It is going to be absolute first target for removal, which is fine because it's your random 2-drop.
So, I think Party Thrasher is going to do well in... Honestly, I think it'll do well in a couple decks. Like, even in aggro, it'll help keep things going. And and it's just a 2-drop. Like, most 2-drops in aggro are only fine, so not a big deal. But Party Thrasher is just pretty solid. I do hate the fact that you have to discard before. Rummage is always worse than looting. But if it's Rummage and you get to pick 2, you get to pick 1 from 2 kind of thing, like that helps offset quite a bit.
Let's talk about another lizard. Let's only talk about lizards for the rest of the night.
Next up is Basking Broodscale. This is 1 and a green for a common Eldrazi lizard. It is a 2/2 and it has Devoid. This card has no Riz. It has 1 and a green for Adapt 1. And then it also has whenever 1 or more +1 counters are put on Basking Broodscale, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawned creature token with sacrifice this creature, add colorless. I wish they could keyword that like last 3 lines.
Make an Eldrazi spawn.
Yeah, like I understand why they have to add all the like additional text, but man, I wish they didn't have to do that. Anyway, that's not really the point of the card.
I also feel like we say that until then they're like, make a cowboy. And you're like, I want to kill myself.
I get what you're saying. It's a lot of words. I just wish it were less words.
Why do many word when few word do trick?
Okay, so this card has a couple things going on with it. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that this does go infinite with Rosy Cotton. This is not the first card to do that. So when this came out, and that was what most of the talk was around, I kind of disregarded it. I thought about it a little bit, and then I was like, not for me. I don't really want to support that. The big reason why this is now on my list, whereas it wasn't before, and why I am playing it now, is I took a week of spoilers off and then came back and looked at it again. And I realized that I was kind of missing the forest for the trees. This is a 2/2 for 2 that has the threat of activation of becoming a 3/3 that also gives you a 0/1 that can, make mana. So it kind of, pays for half of the ability itself. It is able to act somewhat aggressively. You can play it defensively and again, threaten that activation, which can do more than just block and kill, but it can provide an additional blocker. You can use it in a ramp deck if you're really, really at odds for getting a mana. I think that all of that ends up making it, it's a 2-mana creature. You're getting a lot out of a 2-mana creature, in my opinion. I don't think it's the best card in the set. I do think it's primarily going to still remain as, that's the card that goes infinite with Rosy Cotton. But I do think it's at least playable outside of that, which was one of the big issues that I had with Scurry.
Yeah, I think it'll be a decent, just like, curve filler in green, which is like, that's what you want at 2-drop, especially if you're not really supporting ramp.
And Rosy Cotton has huge tits.
Thank you. Someone finally said it.
All right, Bat.
All right, Bad.
All right, Bad.
All right, Bad. Let's talk about Kudo.
All right, I guess that was the transition to my card. Let's talk about Kudo, King Among Bears. Is green-white for a 2/2 legendary creature. Other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears.
This card's sweet.
This is non-ironically my favorite Selesnya card now.
And it also forces people to learn about layers.
It really does, isn't it great?
Especially if you have like a treetop village or any type of manland, and then it's like, fuck, what do I do?
Oh man, old Scion the Ur-Dragon EDH combos.
Oh, hell yeah.
I have my layers so memorized.
Add that humility into it. We're green-white, so it can happen.
This card's not very good though, right?
No, it's very good. What?
This card's insane. It turns all of your opponent's shit into 2/2s.
Yeah, until they kill this and then blow you out.
And if you're playing tokens, it's a fine baseline buff to your tokens. Like, it just gives them a power toughness buff. I'm looking at this for the Selesnya token deck, which is a deck that is underpowered and very mediocre. Selesnya in general is the most boring color pair in Magic.
It's gotten a little bit better lately with plus and plus ones, but
the big thing that I'm worried about is that this ability, you give your opponent the opportunity to blow you out with your own ability, whereas you never get the chance to do that with your own on this card.
No, but it's a defensive layer type card. You're not trying to blow your opponent out with this. You're trying to hate bear them. It is literally a hate bear.
If you bank too much on any singular hate bear, they'll kill it and you'll lose.
But you layer them.
So you play it with like Thalia.
This one in particular is nice because it plays to the strengths of a Selesnya deck. We're going to have a bunch of small creatures and tokens and things with strong static effects anyway, and your opponent is going to be stuck playing shitty 2/2s like a green-white deck would. I don't think it's the strongest card in Selesnya, but it's definitely my favorite card in Selesnya. Coincidentally, I hate Selesnya.
I like Tristani Discordant, but
I do love Tristani still. but like I'm fine playing both in the same deck.
This is a hate bear that I enjoy.
It is interesting that if you're in the +1/+1 counters deck, you do get more benefit than the opponent.
All of the bad Selesnya decks get benefit out of this, whereas every other good color pair gets downgraded by this, except for like the mono red aggro deck.
Okay, yeah, all right, you sold me.
Yeah, it's just a neat little card. And I mean, anytime we can add fun rules interactions,
Especially to boring color pairs like Boros and Selesnya.
then I'm on board.
All right, Eric, bring us into yours.
Yeah, I've got Emperor of Bones. 1 and a black for a 2/2 Skeleton Noble. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. You can pay 1 and a black to adapt 2. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Emperor of Bones, put a creature card exiled with Emperor of Bones onto the battlefield under your control with a finality counter on it. It gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step.
This card seems really good.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet for being a 2-drop. Of note, it does, so I mean, it's doing the whole like reanimate kind of thing, but you can still target your opponent's graveyard and deal with some problematic thing, which is nice.
Free Scavenging Ooze ability. It's totally fine to get random grave hate, especially in modern Magic where the graveyard is a secondary hand.
And when you have your 2-drop that you can then, pay to get the Shallow Grave effect, and now you have a 4/4 in addition to whatever you were doing, it's just solid. And it is nice that the graveyard hate effect happens at beginning of combat on your turn. So, you play this main phase 1 and you still get something out of it kind of thing, which, you can pay 4 mana and get a thing.
All right, Christian, enough talking about good cards. Let's talk about a common.
This is Serum Visionary. 2 and a blue for a common Vidalcan wizard. It is a 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, then scry 2. It's Serum Visions on a dude. And Pondering Mage was a 5 mana creature. I believe it was a 3/4. And when it entered, you pondered. And I really liked Pondering Mage, but in play, the issue was it cost 5 mana. And just at 5 mana, it just wasn't worth getting that additional, enter the battlefield ability off of it. I think that whether or not they tried to, they learned their lesson with that. And now Serum Visionary is much more reasonably costed as a 3 mana 2/2 body, which means that you can actively play it in, again, just most of your blue deck. You can easily play this in control. You could play this in your tempo deck. It's not going to be very aggressive, but it's just a really, really good value card. A lot of those blue tempo decks also tend to have a blink or flicker theme associated with them. You're usually playing Soul Herder. This is just really good with that, just like any other good enter the battlefield ability creature.
If we were 5 years ago, this would be the best rare blue creature in a set.
Agreed.
Yeah, probably, which is interesting how far away from it is now.
Part of it speaks to MH3 has allowed commons and uncommons to have way more than they would have had.
Yeah.
That is a non-zero part of this.
One little glitchy kind of detail that occurs in Peasant is that blue 3 mana creatures, a lot of them are not good in most decks. Serum Visionary hits that nice midpoint where it's just like, you're just going to play this in your blue deck. It's a nice, elegant card.
Brad, next up, what do you have?
Birthing Ritual is 1 and a green for an enchantment with a shitload of text in one big block. Ready? At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature, look at the top 7 cards of your library. Then you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, you may put a creature card with mana value X or less from among us. Those cards onto the battlefield, where X is 1 plus the sacrifice creature's mana value. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
I enjoy how enthusiastic and normal pacing you started.
And then I got to Among Us.
And then just broke himself.
I'm more and more Midwestern. I gotta slow it down.
Took a big pause before the last sentence, still had to clear his throat in the middle.
Birthing Ritual, Birthing Pod, all that stuff.
This is the second best pod effect. It's way better than that shitty sorcery we had back in Eldritch Moon.
There's Eldritch Evolution, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Eldritch Evolution, that was it.
Look at me go. What about Vanifar?
I like Vanifar, but...
Okay, Vanifar is good, but Vanifar is not mono green. This is also really nice because it is not stuck to the +1 counting order.
Oh my god, I'm so happy that they did X or less.
Yes, or less is huge.
Especially since this isn't just a full search. You only get 7, which 7 is a good amount in a limited deck. So
you drew your initial 7, you're on let's say turn 4 randomly, right? So you've drawn at least 3 cards, maybe 4 other cards. So you're looking through a fourth to a third of your deck, depending on fetches and mill and all that crap. You hit a solid amount of creatures to look at. It's going to depend on the structure of what you've got in your selection to play with. You still have to play a bunch of utility creatures, but you're no longer stuck to that very awkward birthing pod. Oh, I don't have a good 4-drop that I want to play, so I'm just going to rip the pod out and not deal with this.
The number of times I've ran into a dead chain.
And this has a ton of upsides to it because there is no activation cost to it. You don't have to commit. You're just looking at the top 7 before you decide anything.
Yeah, that actually, I hadn't thought about that, but that does matter since, like, it isn't a full search. Like, there is a possibility that out of the search, you get an elf.
And you at least get knowledge as well of you rip the top 7, you now know what your bottom 7 cards are in a worst case scenario. You now know to shuffle if you need your fatty and you just threw it to the bottom, which is not nothing here. But in general, it's just a very solid baseline for a birthing pod where you're not going to hit a lot of the ugly edge cases that people hate with birthing pod. That tends to be why people just don't like playing with it, while just being +1 birthing pod count in general, which helps with making that deck viable.
It's true. Honestly, I feel like Birthing Ritual could work in a deck that's not like fully birthing pod necessary. Wow. Birthing Ritual is interesting, and like you could play it in like sometimes you draft a birthing pod deck and it didn't work. Like you just didn't get enough of, 5 drops or 4 drops or like whatever, and the chain's just not gonna happen. Birthing Ritual can still be played in that deck. I don't know, man. Like I think if you like Birthing Pod, you'll probably like Birthing Ritual.
If you're the type of person to test stuff like that, you should test Birthing Ritual, and you're probably going to like it better than most of the things you've tested. If you like Vanifar, you like Birthing Pod, this is a slam dunk for you to grab. It's got so many free cases you'll run into of like, turn 1 you played your elf, turn 2 you just played your Birthing Ritual, had nothing better to do, and oops, I find my Sylvan Carotid. Upgrade my elf. Why not?
Yeah. So there's a lot of similarities, but also kind of thing. So I think it'll work out pretty well if you like Birthing Pod, though.
All right, Eric.
Next up, I've got a common that you could play with. Malevolent Rumble is 1 and a green for a sorcery. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a permanent card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. Create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature, add colorless.
Why is this your number 6, Eric?
I really like this card. Honestly, I wanted to put it higher, but like at the end of the day, it's still just a 2-mana green reveal the top 4 cards, get a card thing. It's just all of it put together works really well for green. So like you're able to get any permanent card, the rest go into graveyard, you're getting a token, and that token can technically ramp you.
I'm 100% in agreement. I was very excited when this card was revealed.
It's obviously not the strongest card ever.
Okay, but thinking of it like a 1-drop, or even like we've played variants of this at 2-drop, I could definitely see because of the Eldrazi spawn, this gets a lot. Just because you're adding in the token value and the fact that it's technically discounted if you're going to sacrifice the spawn for mana at any point.
There's been actually a lot of these that are reveal or look at the top 4 or 5, get a creature, land, enchantment.
I do like Winding Way.
Yeah, Winding Way is pretty decent.
I feel like the ones that I like most are the ones that fill your graveyard at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah, which I think most of them do.
Most of the newer ones do. But yeah, it's just nothing about Malevolent Rumble is outstanding. It's just all of the little bits and pieces put together, I think will be a great 2-drop glue card in green. There's been enough times that extra mana from that Eldrazi spawn is actually going to offset getting the bird bolted kind of thing. And so you'll still be on your game plan as expected. So I just think it's going to work well.
This also, from my perspective, fixes an issue much like the Serum Visionary thing, where it's these sort of like, Winding Way-esque, Seder Wayfinder-esque cards. They're meant for specific decks. And when you're in green, but you're not in that deck, it feels really bad to be continuously getting those kinds of cards in packs. And you're like, I would like to stay in green, but these are just going to be unplayable for me. So this works in all those different decks. It being any permanent is really, really nice.
All right, Christian, talk about the card that was on literally all 3 of our lists.
Hey, Brainsurge. Brainsurge is 2 and a blue blue for an uncommon instant. Draw 4 cards.
Woohoo!
Then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Hey, remember Divination? Remember how a few sets ago at this point, they printed a card called Quick Study, and that was an instant speed divination, and I liked that so much that I made it my number 1 on a list. Anyway, this is just better than that. Quick Study's already cut. So this is awesome. And especially because now at my rarity, I don't even have to break rarity to get a decent amount of pretty decent fetch-ish lands, you know what I mean?
That is true. When it comes to Brainstorm and Brainsurge, having access to a lot of potential to shuffle your library when you want to kind of thing, and especially in lands, that's why Brainstorm is good.
Digging 4 is a lot. I don't think we need to say too much about it.
No, it's one of those cards where it's like, obviously it's extremely good. You've all played Brainstorm in your life, or how did you get here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because it's like, I feel like it's an upgrade to like Thirst for Knowledge kind of thing.
So that's the conversation I kind of wanted to have, but I didn't want us to last forever on an obviously good card, is like, it doesn't fill the yard when you need it to, like you could with Thirst and stuff.
But we already get Factor Fiction or those for that.
And like, Factor Fiction's already kind of slow by nowadays standards,
and like Brainsurge feels like it's going to be, it's not quite the same as Factor Fiction, but it's going to be doing a similar thing in the decks.
You're getting a lot of value out of it, just like you would with Factor Fiction. You're not getting the shenanigans of, and I'm discarding things and getting additional value by having in my grave. You're not doing any of that, but you're just getting the raw value of card selection and card draw.
It's going to feel so good if you hold up mana on turn 3 and your opponent plays nothing you care about. Just end of turn, rip 4 off the top, put 2 back with the one you actually want on top, draw it for the turn, fetch away the bad card, and you have such a disgusting looking grip at this point.
It's not only a lot of card advantage, it's also just like perfect card selection. It's going to be great.
All right, so after talking about that, let's talk about Kodama's Reach.
I was going to say, I am shocked this is as high as it is, but you're you, so...
Flare of Cultivation is a very good card that I think people who are not me will undervalue because they don't play green often. So, Flare of Cultivation is part of the Flare cycle. 1 green for a sorcery, you may sacrifice a non-token green creature rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put 1 onto the battlefield and 1 into your hand, then shuffle.
1 on the battlefield tapped. This is Cultivate.
Yeah, it's Kodama's Reach Cultivate. But this card is playable turn 1. You can have an unboltable bird.
Fair. I mean, you basically bolted your own bird,
but you got your land.
I'll do it myself.
And it's still just fucking Cultivate / Kodama's Reach. Technically, it's slightly harder to cast, but it has no fucking downside over already decent 3-drop ramp. It just has an amazing alternate casting cost that you are usually going to be very happy to do because your mana dorks just get upgraded into lands, which is a safer investment. You are losing a card out of the deal, but it's the whole like, if they play a mountain, you fucking do it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. You're just like, cool, I discarded a card. That's fine. I mulliganed. That's fine. We're still on track.
Interesting that you bring up the fact that it still is a 3-drop ramp thing. It's a little bit more difficult to cast, but like we're in green.
Again, it's technically green. It's not as splashable if you're in like a 4-color weird greedy deck, but
don't do that though.
You're one to talk.
You're one to talk. Eric doesn't add green to those decks.
He plays 4-color non-green.
I don't play green in those decks because ramp with green is not supposed to be 4 or 5 colors. You fucked up.
When Eric is playing a 4-color land deck that has green, it's only because he wants to cast Renin 6 and maybe the Naga.
Essentially, because those are the only good ones in that deck. But green shouldn't be difficult to do in any normal deck.
So, like, the blue one is not on any of our lists because it's fucking cancel if you don't alt cost it, which is terrible. If it was counterspell and had an alt cost, we'd be raving. But that's why this is so much higher on the likable list as far as the flares go, because it loses nothing over the card it replaces. It is just the card, but upgraded now to have the safety modes.
Yeah.
I just want this card to get its credit because it is extremely good. I don't think it's the greatest card in the set or anything, but I think a lot of people disrespect it in the same way like people were disrespecting Endurance. And I'm like, the card's just fucking good. Everyone who's played Ramp knows what happens. If they play a mountain on turn 1 and this is in your hand, you're like, oh, thank God.
I mean, you're still not in a great spot. Like, it's going to be an uphill climb, but you're not completely in the ditch.
You're not looking at the bird in your hand going, you son of a bitch, you're about to betray me.
Yeah, that's about right.
All right, Eric, let's get going. What do you got?
All right, I've got Ocelot Pride.
It is Pride Month.
This card's pretty good, so yeah, I understand that. A single white for a 1/1 cat with first strike and lifelink and ascend. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, create a 1/1 cat creature token. Then, if you have the city's blessing, for each token you control that entered the battlefield this turn, create a token that's a copy of it. It's a lot of words, and ascend is 10 or more permanents, which is a decent amount when you're playing White Weenie, essentially. But we have proven that it is possible, which is the
vampire from Ixalan. Sky Marcher Aspirant?
Yeah, we've played with Sky Marcher Aspirant before, and like Ascend can happen, even in those decks.
Still in my cube to this day. The worst part of the card is that it's a vampire, not a human.
Yeah, which is likely to be a similar thing with this being a cat. As much as the cat is cute and all that stuff.
But Eric, what about Ajani?
Yeah, right. Technically not wrong.
Christian, if you put this in your cube, I'll stop making fun of your stupid life gain deck.
I would love to do so, but instead I cut the life gain deck.
Based.
No, Ocelot Pride, it's pretty good. The first strike is going to be really nice in these decks because you're going to have equipment and stuff like that, and it's just going to help out a good amount. Lifelink's always nice, and it's triggering making tokens. And there's also like the whole magical Christmas land of like, oh, I get to make copies of all the other tokens that I'm making as well, which I mean, it's not nothing, but there is a certain aspect of you already have 10 permanents. How much are you going to overcommit to the board? Yeah, just a great one drop that actually isn't just a 2-power thing. All right, Christian.
All right, so next up, we have Accursed Marauder. 1 and a black for a common, 2/1 zombie warrior, and when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a non-token creature. Holy shit, I love this card. Talk about elegant. This is the most elegant card, in my opinion, for me in this set. I love this card. I love that it's simple. Like, it makes me nostalgic for the game that I started learning how to play back in however long ago now. Edicts are like really bad in Peasant.
I mean, they're just really bad.
They've gotten a lot worse everywhere, and especially so in Peasant. So it being non-token creature is huge. When you cast this, you are going to sacrifice this a huge amount of the time.
It's the same play patterns that Fleshbag Marauder had a decade ago.
It being 2 mana, though, is huge. You don't care that this doesn't have 3 power. That doesn't matter. Other things that I like about this card, just to bring it up, I really like the art. The art also just reminds me of, like, simpler times. I don't know. It feels like older Magic art to me. This card looks really good in old border.
This set, in general, as an old curmudgeon who despises what Magic became about 2 years ago, this set reinvigorated my love for this game in a way that will be utterly dashed within months. As soon as they show off Iron Man and Thor next month, I'm just gonna fucking burn this shit.
I know some people are excited about this card in Pauper as well. Very cool card. I just really, really like it.
All right, I must talk about Snek. I'm so glad we got rid of Naga and we just do snakes now. Fanatic of Rhonas is 1 and a green for a 1/4 creature snake druid. Tap, add green. Ferocious. Tap, add green, 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 green. Activate only if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. And he has Eternalized 2 green, green, which is you come back as a 4/4 black zombie token.
Which works out so well with the Ferocious. Oh my god, it's a combo.
Yeah, if you pay 1/2 green, green, it comes back and you can tap it for green, 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 green.
An important part of this is he's fat as fuck, boy.
Yeah, why is it a 1/4?
Because Lightning Bolt exists.
It was like because of Lightning Bolt. If it was 3 toughness, this would be trash.
If you notice, this is a modern set. Everything has 4 toughness.
If it has anything less than 4, it's for a reason. Nah, this card's awesome, dude.
We've got a lot of options for 2-drop dorks, right? No one's shocked. So Fanatic of Rhonas is probably, as long as you don't care about the colors, which if you do, you pick other ones. If you're okay with like just being mono green, I think you're going to pick Wall of Roots may still be before it.
Sylvan Caryatid has hexproof.
Caryatid's way better than almost everything else. I think that's the only one that is super safe there.
Yeah, in the like defensive kind of let's not do Raphaelos busted dumb shit.
But then it gets into like, do you care about Devoted Druids combos? Do you care about it? Like we get into that stuff and god damn, this boy's tanky. It really helps shore up one of the worst matchups.
It's true. And like the fact that even if they do like push through it, they just come back.
Yeah, and he comes back beefy. And if like worst case scenario, you just use him to bring out whatever your top end is instantly.
Well, shockingly, 4 power is not that difficult anymore.
No, it wasn't difficult years ago, but now it's just, you have it. You didn't realize it, you look down and you have it.
Yeah, you played a 4-drop. Good job.
Sometimes a 3-drop.
Sometimes, yeah. But like, you know, it's one of those that like, it's just not one of those like, oh, I had to get towards the top end of my curve. No, just like you're mid-range and 4 power. Sweet.
All right, Eric, let's talk about the second best red 4-drop from the commander set.
We've got Phyrogoyf, 3 in a red for a star, 1+ star, Lurgoyf. Phyrogoyf's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. Whenever Phyrogoyf or another Lurgoyf creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature deals damage equal to its power to any target. I know that you're shitting on it, but...
Eric, do you remember when we said that Delirium is something that never happens?
Yeah, it doesn't. You're right.
So this is most likely just going to be a 2/3 that shocks on entry or a 3/4 that bolts on entry in a good case.
I feel like it's most likely a 3/4 in these decks because you get the land, you get the creature, and you get the instant or sorcery. And those are almost certainly happening. If they didn't give you a creature in your graveyard, you're punching their face in and don't care.
I think in this deck, the creature's also an artifact, a non-zero amount of time.
Yeah, like not unreasonable to get to 4 at this point, but like 3 is usually what you're gonna do. And I think I quite enjoy having a 3/4 that bolts anything when it enters the battlefield.
It's fair.
And because it's literally anything, it can go to their dome and then you can fire blast them, and that's the game.
It feels like that one Matho clip. This is the best chess piece from 2016.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic creature 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, I hate that is true.
If my only other 4-drops were Hellrider and Pia and Kieran Nalar, this would be a solid 3rd place.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But I still think it's in similar contention, and I would like to test it kind of thing. I think it's far more interesting than the one that you think is better. We'll get to that. It's such a disappointment in my opinion, whereas Phyrogoyf is fun and splashy.
All right, while we're on a red kick, Christian, read us Char.
I was going to say, let's talk about a card that's guaranteed to deal 4 to any target. It's Ghostfire Slice.
It's not red, though.
Eric's correct. Eric is actually correct. It's not a red card.
Okay, so Ghostfire Slice, 2 in a red, instant, uncommon, devoid. This spell costs 2 less to cast if an opponent controls a multicolored permanent, and it deals 4 damage to any target. You want to hear something really fucking funny? You remember my number 10, Breaker of Creation? Yeah, it dies to Ghostfire Slice.
It does die to Ghostfire Slice.
This is the answer.
Reanimator players can't win, man. They just can't win.
Not when they're stuck to shitty cards. I mean...
Uncommons.
Yeah. Ghostfire Slice is sweet, dude. 4 damage is obviously just a lot of damage. It's any target. It's instant speed. It's gonna be 3 mana a lot of the time. But multicolored permanents they're definitely prevalent in my cube specifically. They're certainly prevalent in a lot of peasant cubes. You know, I think it only increases in value when you've got players who are not, you know, devoting a lot of their multicolored slots to things like kill spells or draw spells or that kind of stuff. I've loosened up on that a little bit. I think there is value to having that. But it's important to note, paying 3 mana for this is still pretty good in Peasant. So if you ever get to cast it for 1, you are living the dream.
I feel like it's not that hard to do. What's your multicolored permanent count in Peasant?
It is typically 3 or 4 per color.
Okay. You've got a decent chance of this going off.
Exactly. We don't have to evaluate it as the 1 mana version for it to be good. It is worth noting, though, that that's not flavor text. Like, it will be a 1-mana card decently often enough.
In a normal cube, I expect that Ghostfire Slice in about half of games will cost you 1 mana.
I think that's totally respectable.
You will be able to cast this as a 1-drop and still get to cast something else for value that turn. That's going to happen a lot, especially with the amount of things that let you exile the top blank cards of your library nowadays in red. I expect you're going to get a shitload of value out of this in the mid game.
4 is a lot for potentially 1 mana.
I don't even care about this like discussion on like, oh my god, think all the times it's gonna be 1 mana. It's like, sure, it's still solid at 3 mana, 4 damage to any target.
It would be fine, but you and I wouldn't really be debating if it had no other upside.
Arguably one of the most powerful cards in this set for Peasant.
Now, I could have just done 10 green cards and been happy in this set, but I threw in a red card to make everybody happy.
So naturally you picked a dinosaur.
I did pick a dinosaur, you noticed, huh? Sawhorn Nemesis. Unfortunately, it really doesn't look like a dinosaur.
It looks like a monster hunter.
Yeah, a little bit. Got the monster from Monster Hunter look, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the coloring's like kind of fucked up for that, but
I don't know. T-Rex is yellow and blue. Anyway, Sawhorn Nemesis is 3 in a red for a 2/4 dinosaur. As Sawhorn Nemesis enters the battlefield, choose your opponent. If a source would deal damage to your opponent or a permanent they control, it deals double that much damage instead. So this is your Torbran update in every single way. Eric has an argument against it, which is a fair argument.
yeah, I honestly hate the fact that it's an easy splash. The fact that Torbran was red meant that like you had to commit to being the red aggressive deck to actually play him and get the bonus kind of thing. Whereas like Sawhorn Nemesis was just going to be played in Gruul decks and shit. It's like, yeah, it's good, absolutely, but holy fuck is that boring.
Look, if a Gruul deck is actually winning a game and not fucking around for the whole game.
There's been some solid Gruul decks. It's just they have such a bad taste from when we were doing shit like Blood Braid.
We've done more stupid shit. Like I was running Arlen, I was running... Oh god, my current cube on Cube Cobra is still frozen from back when I ran fucking Thundering Raiju.
I don't know, man. I don't think decks like, you know, the Gruul whatevers need help, and Sawhorn Nemesis is just so boring. If that's what you want to have more support for, then absolutely run it. But like Torbran's downside was why I enjoyed it.
All right, Eric, let's continue this red theme and talk about
Lightning Helix.
Flange.
Yeah. There's no end. So
Phlage, the untouchable.
yeah.
It's very late. I have work in several hours.
Phlage, Titan of Fire's Fury, 1 red, white for a 6/6 legendary Elder Giant. When Phlage enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever Phlage enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to any target and you gain 3 life. And it has escape, red, white, exile 5 other cards from your graveyard.
The card is good. Boros is never going to beat the boring one-note fucking allegations.
I do like what we've done with Boros equipment. It's just interesting that the actual Boros cards, most of them are not needed.
Boros is just generally unnecessary. You know the best Boros card? Arid Mesa.
Yeah, Phlage is, like, honestly, it's just good because it's so fucking annoying. It's very similar to Uro and, like, got the Lightning Helix and then you're doing the escape and, like, it's big thing.
It is definitely much closer to Uro than the other Titan.
Yeah, I mean, Phlage is kind of boring, but like it's efficient, and I think it's probably one of the best options you have if you're just looking for like efficient.
You cast it the first time, you stall out to the point where you can escape it, you win the game with your better Inferno Titan.
Yeah, basically.
All right, Christian, you get a Wurmcoil engine at last.
I got Wurmcoil engine.
Well, it's not the full engine.
It's as good as I'm gonna get.
The most offensive part of this card is that it's not colorless to shit all over green.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. Like, Wurmcoil engine, we're never gonna get anything remote close to that.
Be happy, honestly.
Wurmcoil was a design mistake, being a better 6-drop than every green 6-drop for many, many years.
Yeah.
Okay, so Wurmcoil Larva is 3 black for a 3/3 artifact creature, Phyrexian Worm at uncommon. It has Death Touch and Lifelink, and when it dies, you create a 1/2 black creature with Death Touch and a 2/1 with lifelink. So it is a much smaller Wurmcoil engine, but it is equally as awesome, in my opinion. It costing black mana, not a problem. It just restricts it to certain decks being able to play it. It's 5 mana, you can still play it in a 2-color deck, you'll be fine. Can't really splash for it very easily, but you could try, I guess. This card's just super, super cool, man.
It is weird that it's black, I feel, just because like it's so artifacty, but not that it like really matters at uncommon. But you know, it'd be neat if you could have some artifact aggro bonuses, but whatever, like you still have Wurmcoil now.
This thing is just so good for like value reanimation. I mentioned to you earlier doing something like having a Priest of Bloodrights out, playing Blood for Bones, sacrificing the Priest of Bloodrights, keeping the 5/5 flyer, getting back Wurmcoil Larva to the field, returning Priest of the Bloodright to your hand. I mean, that's exactly the kind of deck that wants to play this. Also, most black decks, I think, would want to play this.
That's a solid assumption, I think. I guess the question is, like, is it good enough to break into rare? I don't think so, but it would be an interesting test, I feel like.
Wurmcoil Larva is sweet.
Speaking of sweet black cards, it's time for a Gobbo, and it's not even Eric's pick. By some miracle, I got to put it on my list.
Yeah, I mean, I like the card, but...
Though, before we get to Eric's top 2, I'm still mad that my top 2 cards of the set are Eric's top 2 cards of the set.
Yeah, but your top one you had to take, like...
My top one I had to take, and this one is extremely good. Warren Soultrader is 2 and a black for a 3/3 zombie goblin wizard. Warren Soultrader has pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, create a treasure token, no tap, no paying mana, straight up free sacrifice.
I mean, it is life still, like Yawgmoth.
Life is a resource, baby.
Yeah, I mean, given that we have played with some that are just pay a life sacrifice thing, like Yawgmoth was bad, but the pay a life part was good.
I love that in the deck this wants to get played, it can just accidentally make infinite treasures. Just Gravecrawler and literally any variant of Blood Artist, like any of them.
Yeah.
Infinite treasure tokens. And if it's Blood Artist, it just kills them.
Ignoring any of the infinite stuff, this is just solid value in those decks.
Oh yeah, every Aristocrats deck, what are you always looking for? A way to do sacrifice without paying mana.
That is really because we have enough Blood Artist variant type stuff.
I think Warren Soultrader might be the black card I would say is the most important in the set. Whether it's the most powerful, I don't care. But like the most important for what it does for your average cube of like, if you're trying to make any form of sacrifice, Aristocrats, anything like that, be more consistent and have more options to have like a better top end without resorting to just, I played a Skull Clamp, idiot. I am very happy that we got a card like this to exist. We have been begging for this for literal years. Even a bad Magic player like Borrelio might be able to pilot the deck now.
All right, so...
Eric, read us the second best card in this set.
Yeah, we've got Tamiyo. For a single blue, you get a 0/3 legendary Moonfolk Wizard with flying. And whenever Tamiyo Inquisitive Student attacks, investigate. And there's some other shit that I don't care about, and it technically matters, so...
Read the rest of the words on this card, Eric. It won't take 5 minutes.
Yeah. When you draw your 3rd card in a turn, exile Tamiyo, then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control, and not a May. This does matter. Tamiyo Seasoned Scholar is a legendary planeswalker with 2 starting loyalty. She has a +2. Until your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, it gets -1/-0 until end of turn. -3, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. If it's a green card, add 1 mana of any color. And a -7, draw cards equal to half the number of cards in your library rounded up. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size.
And importantly, she no longer investigates when she attacks.
Yes, you're right. That planeswalker does not investigate when she attacks.
Don't flip Tamiyo.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen.
Cheat.
Cheat. Yeah,
Staring at Ancestral Recall in hand, crying, shitting myself.
Average Borrelio play.
Tamiyo Planeswalker is not bad for as much shit as we're giving it.
It's a 1-drop.
It's just that Tamiyo Inquisitive Student is why this card is so awesome. Your 1-drop flying 0/3 is actually really good when it investigates on attacks. I'm trying to think of anything that we have that's remotely similar.
This is the best blue 1-drop creature possible. There is not a better one currently in existence.
Yeah, and it's like by such a wide margin that any of the Flying Men variants that are like, but it's good, are laughable.
We were stoked when Hard Evidence came out.
I fucking love Hard Evidence.
It's a good card. Tamiyo makes Hard Evidence look irrelevant.
I mean, it's still a sorcery, so, you know. But, yeah, wow, Tamiyo.
Do you know what we did miss? Tamiyo Seasoned Scholar can get back Hard Evidence over and over.
Hell yeah.
And get us a really slow version of the front half that we wanted to keep. Borrelio thinks Brainstorm is a very bad card and you should stop playing it.
Well, Brainsurge is just strictly better.
We're sticking to Ponder and Preordain, the greatest cards that WotC has ever made.
It's true. Honestly, a solid card like in any blue deck, but especially if you're trying to do any tempo style stuff. Yes, very good card. Tamiyo, C play. Christian, what do you got?
Wrap us up with some Kozilek.
The best card.
This card, more so than any other card on my list, had an effect on my cube. This is a card that I think is very unique. It does something very healthy for Peasant Cube. This is Kozilek's Unsealing. 2 and a blue for an uncommon enchantment with Devoid. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4, 5, or 6, create 2 0/1 Eldrazi spawns that can be sacked to add colorless. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, draw 3 cards.
You know, I am a massive sucker for a 3-drop do nothing.
I think this card's very interesting because I think it helps Simic. And I think it also helps Simic give an identity that is, you want to play bigger cards. But I actually think, and I'm hoping at least, that this actively doesn't incentivize you to play a heavy ramp deck. That instead it incentivizes you to play a little bit of ramp in your mid-range deck. Because that's something that I've had a really hard time with playing a bunch of ramp in my cube, is that, you know, players just want to go all the way to 7 or 8 or whatever, and that's not...
Why would this card make me not want to cast 7 drops?
I think that it does that because it allows you to have a bonus to having 4, 5, and 6. I understand that the 7 thing is there, but I think that this actually gives you more of a reason to be doing the lower thing. Now, there's more to what I want to say here. What this also does is it helps you cast those higher mana cards if you do happen to have them. So if you do have a Simic mid-rangey kind of deck, but you drafted a Pelakka Worm, if you also drafted this, I think you can pretty easily slot Pelakka Worm in, because by just playing the game the normal way that you would, you're going to acquire enough mana that you could feasibly cast it.
I'm playing the shit out of Breaker Creation.
And also, it really helps that card.
The real reason it's here, because it makes the other card better.
Let's fucking go, dude. Those 2 cards are going to be in a deck.
I think, though, that, you know, obviously Eldrazi spawns are always treated this way, where it's like, yeah, no, they definitely can make mana for you. They're also just creatures. It's every time you cast a 4 mana, 5 mana, 6 mana creature, you just get 2 more. And that can be huge for stabilizing. Yes, it's a 3 mana do nothing, but then as long as they don't destroy it immediately, I mean, pretty much every card you're playing after that point stabilizes you.
2 tokens is actually quite a lot. You cast a 4-drop creature and now you have 3 dudes, and 2 of them are just going to sack.
You're chump blocking or you're making more mana.
Yeah.
You can do something like play Kozilek's Predator and just get 4 spawns. And now you've got a lot of mana. It's going to allow you to more easily cast 2 mid-range level creatures in the same turn. I just really, really like this card. I have liked it ever since it was spoiled. I have been building my cube around the fact that this card exists. I think it's awesome.
Dude, I'm so looking forward to when they reprint Awakening Zone at Uncommon to see what happens to your cube. Like, it's just gonna be a fucking Eldrazi invasion.
Christian's like, I should have been playing with rares this whole time.
Yeah.
This card's bad by their standards. All right, Christian, it's time to discuss my last card.
Just the cutest.
A little puppy. Look at that fat bastard that Eric pasted over the actual art of my fat little dog. Phelia, Exuberant Shepherd, is 1 and a white for a 2/2 legendary creature dog. She's got flash, and whenever the goodest girl attacks, exile up to 1 other target non-land permanent. At the beginning of your next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it entered under your control, put a +1 +1/+1 counter on Phelia. So yeah, Phelia is honestly just a very good white 2-drop, and you get to play with a fucking corgi. Even if you don't have blink themes, offensively, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent. You can exile their wall, whatever they're gonna block with while you're in an aggro deck. It doesn't come back till the end step.
That's true.
She's pretty decent. You just don't play your 2-drop for the turn, pass turn to them at end step, flash her in, continue beats.
Yeah, it's just repeatable flicker wisps. Holy shit.
No, she's very good. I don't think she's the best one ever printed or anything, but she is well in the cubable area. And she's got a lot of play. Like, you can do it to your own stuff for a flicker thing. Obviously amazing. I do love me a flicker deck, everybody knows. But she just works offensively.
Yeah, I hadn't actually put that together, and both of those aspects mean that, like, going to work great as a 2-drop in white.
She also permanently kills tokens. Brelio had one good take in this episode. Mark it down on the board. Brelio, 1 point. Brelio hates dogs. He just said it.
They gave you just like a really, 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 really good soul herder.
She is a very good card you should be playing, but also I have a very big soft spot for dogs in general, and I own a corgi. This card is going to be a card that my wife wants. Like, it is very rare for my wife to want a magic card. All right, Eric, let's talk about the best card in this set and have to explain the most confusing block of text in this set.
Yeah. Springheart Nantuko is 1 and a green for a 1/1 enchantment creature insect monk. It has bestow for 1 and a green. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Also has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 and a green if Springheart Nantuko is attached to a creature you control. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature. If you didn't create a token this way, create a 1/1 green insect creature token.
Now, you think you know how that works, but unless you looked up someone explaining it, you don't.
Most likely you've missed something. I had to follow the chain, essentially.
I literally just misunderstood the exact flow chart until someone else explained it on Reddit. And I was like, oh shit, this thing is amazing.
If it's not bestowed, you can't pay the extra cost, so all you ever get is a 1/1.
But you always get a 1/1 just for having landfall.
Yeah, if it is bestowed and you don't pay, you get the 1/1. If it is bestowed and you do pay, you get the copy of the bestowed creature.
Yeah. It's confusing, isn't it?
Once it's all like set out, it's not that bad, and like it'll play fine once you've played with it once or twice.
But I guarantee most people did not understand this on the first reading of it.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I missed that, like, it's bestowed and you don't pay, you still get the 1/1. But this reads complicated, and it's kind of complicated, but I think once you like actually play it a few times, you'll get a feel for it. But holy shit, is it so cool. There's nothing I don't like about it other than it's tricky.
I think our entire play group is a sucker for Bramble Sovereign already.
Oh, hell yeah, man.
This card, just being an enchantment creature, having bestow, gets bonus points in our play group because we've always wished enchantments didn't suck ass.
One day, I thought this was going to be the set, but we're not there yet. Insert me saying that for the last 18 years.
Having generic good ones helps, though. I am a huge fan of this card. It and Tamiyo were my top picks, and then I got here late, and Eric had already picked them as his top picks. So there went my plans.
I love the fact that you're always getting a 1/1 token. And then, oh, maybe I'll also get something even better if I want to pay for it.
On my first read of this, I did not understand that if it, like, after it falls off from being bestowed,
Yeah.
that you're still getting 1/1s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this is just always good, because they have to remove it twice in order to stop you constantly making new creatures whenever you play a land.
And, like, honestly, there are cases, not particularly your cube, but where you'll be wanting to play it just as the 2-drop and just go wide as fast as possible kind of thing. And, you know, play an anthem of some type and just kill them. Because that happens pretty quickly if you're doing, like, fetch lands and stuff like that.
I mean, we are still double fetch. I never took them out.
No, I'm just saying, like, your cube doesn't really do green tokens.
Not really. It's why I like Kudo so much.
Yeah.
Is that it gives you ammo and reason to play Selesnya tokens, a more fair deck that I think is not very good in real unpowered settings. The more you feed into that all at once, the more you can make that a real thing where people want to play mid-range token decks that aren't just, I'm going to play a bunch of planeswalkers that happen to make tokens.
Right. Which is like, yeah, it's probably the best options that we had for a while, but wow, is that boring, and it's also not great. So yeah, Springheart Nantuko, like I keep thinking of all the like, oh, I'll bestow it on this, I'll bestow it on that, and it'll be great, and I'll just, those are actually reasonable place to just put it on whatever you want. But even if you don't, it's still a good card.
It does help with Delirium though, Eric.
Yeah,
That's true.
especially in green.
Well, you're already channeling your Besiju.
Yeah. So
I'm glad we spent our 2 mana channeling Besiju to get a land in the yard instead of playing this.
yeah, shifting woodland is looking better and better.
The amount of jokes that Braulio just has to cut because there is no context for them.
No, see,
That
he
is
can
sad.
add the context, right?
Just in the bonus content, explain like, so here's what happened. Brad's an asshole, and I definitely said something cooler than what they're all accusing me of.
It'll be the selective memory of, okay, let me spend the next 20 minutes figuring out what the best response is.
How could I have said something that they're all misunderstanding? It's not that I'm an idiot.
All right, that is it. This set
We have discussed
is...
like 45 cards on this top 10 list. Maybe more because we technically discussed a whole 10 land cycle in addition. That is it for us. This has been a wonderful set.
Yeah,
All right, enough of us though. Let's get out of here for the week.
sounds good.